Welcome to the AI Ireland podcast, your window into the world of AI innovation on the island of Ireland. Join us as we explore how AI is harnessed to tackle both business and societal challenges, revealing the cutting-edge solutions emerging from this vibrant AI community. Don't forget to subscribe for the latest updates and insights in the world of AI. So it's Mark Kelly and I'm with Stephen Redmond. Stephen is Head of Data Analytics and AI at BearingPoint, and we're at the BearingPoint offices now with a really nice view. Stephen, firstly, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me and welcome to our office.
So we've been outside there and I was thinking it was about 6 years since you were on the podcast, where I think it was like episode 5 or episode 6. We're now surpassed episode 150. In some ways, not a lot has changed, but in other ways, an awful lot has changed in the world of AI. It's a topic that everyone's talking about to some level, which is really nice to have. You've had a variety of careers in the world of data, BI, data analytics. For people that don't necessarily know you or didn't listen to the first episode, how many years have you been working in this field now?
Oh, more years than I care to remember. Going back in 1999, I was founder of a company that was doing CRM for targeted at pharmaceuticals. And of course, there was a lot of data involved in that. Before that, I'd been working in another startup. I wasn't a founder of that, but there was a lot of data in that. It was doing credit card transactions, but very structured kind of stuff. CRM, there's a little bit more unstructured data into it, which nobody was talking about unstructured data back in those days. And you're working with SQL Server. And then we moved into doing business intelligence, and we started working with Click at the time, and we became one of Click's leading partners in the UKI. I developed a global reputation of that and ended up writing 3 books about Click. And then back in 2015, I decided to change a little bit, and I moved to Deutsche Bank into what was then a visualization lead role as part of the data lab here in Dublin, their Global Analytics Centre of Excellence. So built up my experience at that stage. Decided to go back to college as well, just because it didn't have enough on. So I did 2 years of a master's degree in data analytics in NCI. Then after that, I went back into NCI teaching part-time as well on the same course, which I really enjoyed for a couple of years. And by the time I graduated, I moved from Deutsche Bank into Accenture. And I worked there in Accenture for 6 years, and most of that time leading a group of data innovators working for Accenture. So we were building innovative data solutions for internal teams in Accenture, and of course working in a lot of AI stuff. So I was in Accenture when we talked before, and then at the end of November last year I decided to make another move and have moved into BearingPoint to take some of those learnings in data and AI to a wider client base.
So you've wore so many different hats. So you're coming from it from so many different angles. From the academic perspective, you've had a touch of the startup, you're getting your hands on the data, you're looking from an internal perspective, giving options as a go-to-market, and then you're working with businesses in terms of, okay, I have this data, we've got proprietary data, how do we leverage it for better decision making? How do we leverage it for customer experience, employee experience? So you're seeing it from such a broad perspective. And then you're also sharing your wisdom on either blog posts or speaking at Dublin Tech Summit. So you're fully immersed in it. Yeah. Which I think is wonderful, because you can talk to people credibly and say, this is what's possible currently. How do you find customers' expectations from business integration of AI? Are they ambitious about wanting to get started straight away, or are they a little bit unrealistic about the time taken to get there? Or maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but what are you seeing currently?
It's a little bit of a mix. One of the things I learned very early on when I was at college, actually, and I hadn't come across it before, even though it's quite an old approach, is the cross-industry standard practice for data mining, which is CRISP-DM. And that's a kind of a cyclic way of building data models. But the very first box on that is business understanding. And then you go from business understanding to data understanding. So you don't start looking at the data until you understand what the business problem is. But actually in that model, there's a two-way arrow going between those two, because you go from the business understanding to the data understanding and you go, hang on, this data doesn't make sense, and you need to go back to the business. There's a back and forwards there. So it's getting the business helping the business to understand what they want to achieve. A lot of people are very excited about AI, but they're not really sure what they can do with AI. There are so many places you can do it, so many different things that you can do, but they're not really seeing where they fit it into their own workflows. So that's where we come in and really help with that.
And unless when ChatGPT came to town in November 2022, the world of generative AI became very popular. We've had nearly 24 billion invested in it last year, and companies are really trying to get under the hood of it. But AI is so much more than just generative AI. The low-hanging fruit, though, seems to be the opportunity in generative AI in terms of some of the off-the-shelf products such as Copilot that you can start to introduce and analyze your own data. But how do you start to manage proprietary data and take advantage of what's unique to your business? Because you don't necessarily want to be training on millions and millions of websites that aren't necessarily related to what your business problems are.
Yeah, ChatGPT came along and exploded AI. My 88-year-old mother rang me and said, "What's this A1 stuff that I heard about?" And she would never have asked me about anything before like that. But we were doing AI before ChatGPT came around. We were using language models. When I took over the team in Accenture, one of the first models we were deploying was using BERT, which was the early LLM transformer-based model that kind of led the way through to what we have today. But AI is, as you say, it's a bigger proposition than just generative AI. I think for businesses though, generative AI hits a chord because they can see, actually maybe there's something in this for us, whereas other AI tools, so if you think about a prediction model that, and people have been doing intelligent automation for a long time and that's been around, so a prediction model will make a prediction of a particular value, and that's nice. A lot of those AI models, very specifically targeted, narrow AI models. The generative AI are a little bit broader. We're not quite at artificial general intelligence yet, which can just be human-like intelligence, but they're getting towards that, and they're going to help us achieve new business outcomes that we weren't able to before. But there's threats in there, and businesses will need to carefully manage what they do and how they do it.
It's funny because coming here today, I was on Claude and I could create a website, I could write a novel, I could create image without having the skills to do those, and I could do them all with a prompt.
Yeah.
Which a year ago would have been unheard of. Although there's talks of it, but to use something free like that is pretty amazing. So in one stage, you've got businesses now that people are coming in to work each day and are using some of the tools where in the past it would have been more advanced maybe than your personal usage. But you've actually now got the access to these tools for free that you can do on par in some ways. So the expectations from employees is increasing now that they want to have that digital experience. Yeah. So businesses are, I'm guessing, are more under pressure now to try to introduce that.
Yeah, I think, so businesses are introducing it. You'll see a lot of companies, for example, are deploying Microsoft Copilot for their organizations. At the minimum, there would be licensing Claude models, or they'd be licensing other Microsoft. So copilot.microsoft.com, which you can get an enterprise version of, which means your data is protected, which puts those barriers around it. So those are available for a lot of organizations. Obviously, there's a little bit of change management around that because people, they do have expectations, but a lot of people are still a little bit nervous of them and don't understand what they can do with them. So you use Claude to do this, but there's a lot of people who don't know how to use Claude to do that. And so for some of the things, so you can go to Suno, you can generate a song. It's a bit generic, right? It's not going to replace a good music artist anytime soon. It could be used as a tool by music artists, though, to help them generate new content themselves. You go into Claude, you generate an image. It's a good image, is good enough for, like, I used DALL-E all the time for creating content for my posts on LinkedIn. And they're good enough for that. Are they good enough for a full-scale advertising campaign? I'm not sure, but are they good as a starter image to help an artist to develop something more? I always mocked up my own stuff anyway, so I'm not stealing anyone's work, but I always find these tools are starters. You always get the best results out of them when you know what the answer is, I think.
Yeah.
So that they are getting better. They are very good at generating codes. They're very good at generating database code for SQL, for example. I wrote an article recently about this, about how if you feed it the metadata of the database, it can generate a query that can answer a business question. That will have impacts on people's careers. People who are working in data analytics, for example, who do write those queries to answer those business questions, are they now cut out? That's when I say change management is a really important part of the piece, because people will need help, they'll need new training. Recently, BearingPoint in France did a piece of analysis for an organization where they looked at all their job roles, so the descriptions, and used generative AI to actually map those to where those jobs may be impacted by generative AI. So now that organization has information where they can actually go and see which of my people we need to think about retraining and helping them to move up the food chain.
Yeah, because it's funny, when I'd spoken to Kieran McCorry from Microsoft like a year ago, he had said that over 60% of the code now is written by AI in Microsoft. I'm guessing that's probably increased to maybe 70, if not more now. And I said, what does that mean for people's roles? Is the engineer or the person that was doing the role previously is doing better work, but he's closer to the customer because he can now reimagine what it can be done while he's just checking the work is still to a certain standard.
Yeah.
I feel like what I'm noticing from wearing my hat in the recruitment world is that organizational change is going to happen, because the job descriptions that we currently have with AI coming involved, they start to become different, and then they need to be reimagined because the bar will be raised, because I think you're going to be more productive, but you'll probably play a different role. So that element of training is going to be needed. Depending on who you talk to or what you read, probably about 10% of organizations are successful with AI in terms of getting return on investment. Now, what that success looks like will differ depending on each business. So there's a lot of research still trying to figure that out. What type of use cases are you seeing in the market that are showing the art of what's possible and helping customers be either more productive or offering a better experience?
Yeah, I think I wrote an article for Silicon Republic earlier in the year, and I said this year was going to be the year of the copilot. I still stand by that. I see a lot of those being rolled out for the assistant. So being able to talk to your own data. So lots of people have lots of repositories of data. A lot of it's siloed, a lot of it inaccessible, and nobody knows what's in there. So that does mean there is a job of work to make sure that's curated somewhat, so you're not revealing too much information to people. There's oversharing issues, but by being able to plug that data into an assistant, whether that's like through Microsoft Copilot, through something like an AI Copilot Studio that Microsoft have as well, which is a Power Platform tool, building something bespoke, getting your developers to build it. You can spin those up really quickly on cloud platforms now, using what's retrieval augmented generation techniques, or RAG. So those are the quick kind of low-hanging fruit ones. We see an example of a tool that BearingPoint have put in place for Plan International in Norway. It's a non-governmental organization who do projects in developing countries. They have to do a lot of reporting back to stakeholders who are funding these projects, and they're getting information from project managers on the ground through email, different documents being sent up, and there's a large amount of work to collate those into a coherent report. So BearingPoint have built a tool that will use generative AI to put those together and create the first draft of the report. And that's the majority of the work, though. So it's a real time saver for an organization that isn't replete with people or money. So that makes a big difference. I think for me, what the exciting kind of future is what I talked about at Dublin Tech Summit was the generative BI. And so this is where businesses can start to not talk to their documents, but talk to their data and combine those with documents. I think graph RAG is a new technology that's emerging, combining knowledge graphs Knowledge graphs have been around for a long time. I've deployed projects with them, but I don't think they've really delivered on their promise. But I think the combination of knowledge graph and as a retrieval mechanism for RAG is going to be huge, and that will allow people to both talk to their documents, talk to their data, and just ask natural questions. Business people don't have to be prompt engineers. We don't want them to be prompt engineers. But what they have to be able to do is ask good business questions. I do see in the interim data analysts emerging into business analysts who understand the data and can actually ask good questions, but also understand when the response isn't quite right. But the AIs will just get better and better, and those responses will get better and better.
Yeah, and as you get older, you see that success of life is the questions you actually ask, and you're trying to underneath that. And with these AI tools, being very effective at a question is still important, but also guiding you on the outcomes you're looking to try to gather is going to get closer. So Sequoia recently put a blog post out there about the $600 billion question about AI, and are we going to get the value of it? Is it a bubble, that cycle, which with NVIDIA stock price going so high and all these things, you can imagine why this question is being asked. How do you help companies start to talk about some of the wins they've had in the data analytics space coming into that AI space, where they're not necessarily the best storytellers, which is important because they need to get the recognition for further investment from senior CEOs or the board. But to do that, you need to clearly articulate those war stories to show this is where we've had the journey, this is the outcome, this is what we now can do, this is what we can do for the future. It seems like there's a bit of a gap in that area.
Yeah, I think anyone who's ever seen one of my presentations, including the Tech Summit, will know that I like to take a storytelling approach. I want to use metaphors that people can understand, people across industry, so not just technology people but also business people, because I believe that's a better way of getting things across. If I have a slide deck, I don't tend to just share my slides with people when they ask, because I wrote a blog post about that a couple of years ago as well, because my slides generally don't have a lot of content in them. They have images and I'm narrating around those. So if I just shared you my slide deck, you wouldn't understand. So I took the approach for the Dublin Tech Summit of actually transcribing my narration along with the slides into a LinkedIn article recently, because that was a better way to share them. People were asking me, can I have your slides? So that's the better way. So I think storytelling is a hugely important skill. Storytelling with data is a really important skill. So a lot of the tools that we use today, like the Power BI or the Click or the Tableau, enable us to connect to data and create very nice dashboards, but sometimes those dashboards are not very connected and don't themselves tell a story. There is an art in being able to take that data and then communicate that to people. I do think AIs will actually get good at that too, because to a certain extent there's a formula around it. If they can tell us a detective story, if you ask them, or write poetry, why can't they tell us stories around our data?
Yeah, one of the ways I've been able to use OpenAI's ChatGPT is take a 200-page report, turn it into an executive summary, and create 2 or 3 interactive bar charts or images on that report to tell that story. And that's mind-blowing how you can get the most important things to share. And with people being so digitally distracted and so much information, people working in the world of data need to be able to get that message across in a succinct way that it resonates with them.
Yeah.
As we go through that kind of co-pilot and that augmentation experience, some companies are going to make it, some companies are going to be slow to change. And change management is difficult at the best of times, because if you're to tell me my weekend is going to be different than I expect it to be, I'll be very hesitant of that, right? So how do you help organizations win the hearts and minds of people to prepare them for this journey, navigating them as a guide?
We actually have a team of really great specialists here who are trained in delivering those change management programs. And we do it internally for ourselves as well. We deploy these AI tools. We have Copilot, we have other tools. All the basics need to be done. You need to message people. You need to let people know that change is coming. You need to provide training. You need to develop champions. in the organisation. All of these are the really important things. So that's what we offer is for companies is that change management approach.
Yeah, because sometimes we can be fixated on the technology, but the technology will only be an enabler if it's solving a problem that people actually want to use and actually gravitate. And it's where you're at that water cooler and you're saying, how come John is finishing work at 5 o'clock each day? He usually finishes around 6:37 while he's using Copilot, don't you know? And suddenly there's the fear of missing out, and you're starting to gravitate towards those stories because they become real. That's the difference between having a glass of wine with your partner on a Friday rather than being on the M50 getting home at 7, you getting home at 5 and things like this. Where do you see the next kind of 6 to 12 months playing out? I wouldn't even ask you about 5 years because that seems crazy.
It does. So the next 6 months to a year, obviously everyone is building. Every week almost we see a new model come out. So we had Claude come out, the latest version come out. Meta have released the latest version of their models. And we know OpenAI are working on GPT-5 and everyone's waiting to do that. They're all adding new capabilities, all the multimodal stuff, or the being able to generate audio, the Suno is incredible. It create a whole song, a singer, everything. Just there you go. It's actually fun. You know, these things are fun to share with your friends.
Me and my kids use it all the time.
Yeah,
it's funny the songs we've come up with and how my kids are using ChatGPT and the images they create, the talks and the chats, and it's funny. We think we're going to use technology in a certain way, and then we use it in so many different types of ways.
What this is the thing is, and I think this is what's going to drive us as an industry. And as I don't want to say humanity or whatever, but is that what happened with ChatGPT 2 years ago sparked imagination. And now people are just doing things and it's just more and more rapid because people know they can do it. Before that, people thought of AI as being just something hard to do. And now AI, for a lot of, if as a developer, I'm rolling out a assistant for a client at the moment, and it's just a load of API calls. I don't have to go and we have to curate the data going into it to make sure that it's given the right answer. But I don't have to build the model. I don't have to spend all that time doing that. I just plug everything together and it works. It's really good, and that just plug it. That's easy to say sometimes. Just plug it together. That's sometimes challenging, but it's reasonably straightforward for people with those skills.
Particularly when you spend months, if not years, trying to do it the other way and trying to reinvent the wheel where you don't have to, and this open source is available. Just finally, you've been able to be involved in the Irish ecosystem from the AI Awards perspective and being able to judge some of the really interesting applications and being a judge again this year. What are you most looking forward to?
I have really, really enjoyed being a judge on the AI Awards over the last few years. I think I've been on, from year one, I've been a judge. And I love seeing the projects and finding out about what people are doing. I think I did the academics last year, and that was that was the students' projects. They were really fascinating. In year one, there was a project that came in that's doing analysing cow poop for parasites using AI. It was it's such a broad spectrum of things. It's a great thing to be involved in. I really enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm always inspired how, even problems such as traffic light sequencing in Limerick, about how they could actually help congestion and looking at the roads and traffic and then handing it to the council and coming up with different ways, or even looking at the optimal time to buy blueberries from a shop like Aldi and how you actually store them and how you can manage that through computer vision. And then you've got this completely just reimagining problems and coming up with solutions. I'm really interested in how you're going to use generative AI this year and look to build on people who aren't necessarily technical and coming up to see how they come up with different problems, solutions to them using off-the-shelf products too. So it's going to be interesting.
It's going to be exciting, yeah.
Stephen Redmond, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mark.
On the 26th of November, join us for the 6th Annual AI Awards at the Marco Hotel in Dublin. This year's event promises to be our largest and most impressive yet, with over 300 community members in attendance and over 48 applications of AI in action. This truly is an incredible world-class event, and we are inviting you to this event. Experience the excitement live, because we're going to be capturing this with a world-class film crew, and it's going to be streamed online. However, if you want to join us in person, book your table now, because opportunities are limited. If you're interested in sponsoring this year's awards, please contact me at Market.ai Awards for more information and see the best in class of AI applications on the island of Ireland.